Kia ora whānau, join me as I carve this hibiscus flower out of monkey pod wood. If you're wondering how to get that three-dimensional looking type flower, stick around because I go through the steps of how I achieve this look at the end. So you might hear in the background some squealing noises. This is just the, we were just watching a movie as I was carving this. A lot of the times it's hard for me to sit through a movie, so I'm usually making stuff or doing things while that's happening. So that's what's in the background. Anyway, back to this. The beginning stage is probably the most important to define the shape of the flower. I found a really good reference on YouTube of someone carving a hibiscus flower in the relief style that I was looking for. So I use that as a reference, and maybe I can link it in the description below. But really what the main goal is to separate the layers. So the first step is to draw out the hibiscus. You can copy or use my shape and design as a guide. And then the next step is to define the flower for the first level. So that means taking away the wood around the circumference of the flower. The chisels I'm using are from Woodcraft, pretty expensive. It's about $1,500 or $1,400 for the whole set. Definitely recommend that. If you're starting out, there's cheaper sets on Amazon that I can link below to get you started, and they honestly do a really good job as well. But I just like having all the different sizes so that I can fit it in the right shape and place that I need. So right here, again, I'm defining and redefining the shape of the flower and the leaves. So I'm taking away the bulk of the wood around the flower, and I'm using a flat to kind of define the edge of the flower, and I keep going back. This next step, I would say this is step 2, is adding depth to the center of the flower, and this really gives the flower the shape that you want to make it look like it's three-dimensional. Sometimes in the beginning you're fairly hesitant to put or to make deep cuts in the wood, but it's surprising wood is fairly forgiving, and you can make fairly deep cuts without ruining the whole piece or without making a cut too bad that you can't recover from it. So I would say if you're worried about the wood, you can use a practice piece of MDF. This is what I do to practice before I go into the wood that I'll be using for the art piece. Or if you get a scrap piece of wood, you can just go hard, and you'll understand that over time it's better to take more off and to make confident cuts than being very hesitant, because then the shape or the piece won't have its shape and you'll be frustrated at why it doesn't look the way it should. So all that to say is be confident when you make the cuts and don't worry about going too deep. So this part is also very important, is to define the depth underneath each petal. So you can see on each petal there's a side that is deeper than the other. On one of the petals, both sides are underneath, and so the two petals on either side are overlapping. And what really helps in sculpting or carving a flower is to look at a flower for reference. And you'll notice that there's a lot of peaks and valleys, there's a lot of dips in places where you wouldn't expect. Especially trying to translate that into a carving can be difficult. But as you add depth in the center of the flower and around the petal, you'll notice that it's taking form. So you can see I keep going back to the middle to make sure that the depth is right, because then the flower looks like it's coming out of the middle. I think I was looking at a certain scene. I just paused for a second. There we go. So yeah, back to the flowers. I keep redefining and aligning the petals on the side, so that top one has two ridges on each side. And if you notice, if you look carefully, you can see the middle has the stem coming center of the flower. And so that, in the beginning, I thought this had to be thicker than it was, but it's not actually that thick. So you can basically subtract the bulk of the meat around the petal and then leave that stem. You can see it take shape. It's always helpful if you have a good light to see what you're carving, because the shadows make a big difference. So at this point again, I'm redefining the edges of the petals inside. It's really important to make sure that the overlapping is higher on one side and lower on the other. If you make it all the same height, it's really hard to get that three-dimensional depth that you're looking for. That really helps the piece look like a flower, look like the petals are actually moving, have movement. You can see that I'm not too worried about the leaves on the side. I'm just leaving that, and I'm working on it a little bit just to give my eye a reference of how many flowers and how deep I need to go. But I would say, looking back at this, I could have taken a lot more meat off in the beginning, so I'm not going back and forth a million times. Overall, you might ask, like, how long did this take? I think it took like 4 to 5 hours. This is again a sketch, it's not like a final piece. This is just on a practice piece of wood. But I think I'm going to keep this because it turned out kind of cool. And there's definitely more refining that I should do later on after this video. But what I want to show you is that it takes a while, a little bit, to get past the ugly baby stage, they call it. And so some of us at this point were like, I'm just not achieving that realistic look. And you can give up, but what really makes the piece is just staying with it, looking at real flowers as reference, and then just doing your best to capture the shapes that it's showing. So one thing is, if you notice on the petal, it has a ridge on the almost on the center of the petal, and then it dips down. And so that's really important. Something that took me a while to understand is that really makes the petal. If you don't achieve that, it's just kind of flat and it doesn't have any of that movement that I was talking about. So right here I'm using a half round. These are pretty important to use. Definitely comes in that kit. I'll link it down below. It does come in that kit. And so what you want to do at the edge of the petal, you actually want to scoop it out. Because if you look at a hibiscus, you'll notice that it actually flares up. And when you capture that little twist or turn that faces up, you start to see it come to life and you get pretty excited. I do, at least when I start to see it looking more like the flower. So this little chisel I'm using is maybe like 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters wide, which is like, I don't know, 2/8 of an inch. So that's really helpful to get into those tight places. And again, I'm just scooping out, making that ridge right there on that petal. So it feels counterintuitive because you're like, the petal, like, I'm digging down, how does that make it look correct? But in the end, you can see that it's actually coming down in the center. It goes up and then dips down and goes up again at the edge. And so hopefully, me explaining some of the thought process and concepts behind this, it can help you in your carving to make it more realistic, and you can create something that you're happy with. I've spent a lot of hours. I don't do a lot of this realistic kind of stuff, but I do love going at it. A lot of my work is more Māori, Hawaiian, Polynesian style carving. So it is nice to go into this once in a while. I think perfecting this for me is definitely interesting, and I want to get better at it as I go. But this is actually for a gate that I'm making. So it's a 16 feet wide gate, 9 feet high, and it's going to be carved into the gate on the border of it as a relief carving. So I have to get this concept down in my mind in order for this to happen, and I can't wait to share that project with you guys later on. So you can see again, I'm working at the leaf, working around the leaf, making sure that there's layers. There's pretty much 3 layers here. Or 4. the layer behind it all, which dips down. Then you have the leaf, and then you have the petals, and then you have the stem. So some of the petals are higher than the stem because you want the stem to almost feel like it's back, and then the petals are reach like the highest point of this carving is the petals that are closest to the viewer, which is at the bottom area in the right. So that helps give it depth. And so right here I'm working on the outside of the leaf, making sure that it is separated, because a lot of beginner carvers don't separate that enough, and then you get frustrated. So I saw on the reference on the video from YouTube the stem, and I've carved a hibiscus before, and I actually did like little balls or circles for the center of the tip of the stem. Anyway, I saw this different technique where he just chiseled straight across it and did almost like a crosshatch. You'll see it right at the end. And I thought that was a really good way to represent the little nodes or whatever you call them at the end of the stem. Or the center thing, I should probably know what that's called. Instead of like doing them individually. So there's like a few things that I'm understanding with carving. Is one, you from a distance to achieve that representation of the flower. So you can see, that reads as that center stem thing. And then another way to do it is to be very realistic and carve out every single detail. And so although I think that is good, here we go, we're getting close to the end. Although I think that's good, I think there's like this element of like artistry that you can achieve without being super hyper. Boom, here it is, the final, well, not really final, but close to final piece. It is the relief carving of the hibiscus flower with 4 leaves in the background on monkey pod wood. There's a few holes in this piece of wood that, I don't know, some bugs got into it, but overall I'm happy how it turned out. I hope this sort of annotated voiceover helped you in your process of carving. Let me know if there's anything else that you need help with that I can respond to in the comments below. If you want to learn more about my artwork, head to my Instagram, hummyorder.art, and or visit my website, hummyorder.com. Until next time, whānau, kia ora.